The book that I have is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. Throughout the novel, you're going to find things that are symbolic, which symbolizes many different things. For example, the fires throughout France symbolizes the burning fire of revolution beginning. The scenes are so well described and they're written so vividly. You gotta give some credit to the talent of Dickens here in this novel. And leading on from that, his writing is just really eloquent. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but when you're reading something and the author just feels wise and he feels like he knows what he's doing, and there's just something so profound in that. A Tale of Two Cities has many dynamic and admirable characters. You get to know all of them, which is so important. You're really getting to know them. So by the end of the book, you kind of have this attachment with all these characters, which makes the ending so much more bitter. The characters are realistic and relatable. Sidney Carden is probably pretty relatable with his view on life. He doesn't think much of himself, and that's what makes him such a relatable character. It's everyone understands what it feels like to be unworthy, and therefore that is Carden being relatable. Another amazing part of this novel is you can nerd out over the historical moments. For example, if you learned about the French Revolution, every time they mention any detail about the French Revolution, it's immediately you're like, oh my gosh, I know about this. So you can like nerd out over the history of this. One of the most important things in its book is how it connects to people and how it influences them in different ways. It's relevant today, and it connects even to who we are as people. Themes that are very awakening. Just right off the bat, they have topics of redemption. They have the topic of class division and class struggle, of condescending attitudes between different classes. They talk about a buildup of frustration, of anger, of resentment. It talks about the blind search for justice and how that blind search for justice, with no exceptions to that search for justice, leads to absolute chaos. It talks about stereotyping, classism. It does swerve around the topic of mob mentality, where as an individual you hold yourself to certain standards, but as a mob, suddenly you don't have that same ethics. The mob mentality, it's angry, it's rash, it's impulsive, and then after that you see these completely other different side of these people, and they're gentle and they're loving and they're kind. And I think the statement that Dickens is trying to make throughout all these topics, all these themes, throughout the entire novel itself, is that there really is no good or bad. There's always a mixture of both. And we only say something's bad because we don't know the other side of it, or we can't comprehend the other side of it, or we don't understand the other side of it. We don't understand where people are coming from. And I think once you understand where someone is coming from, it just changes the entire perspective. Charles Darnay is convicted for a crime that he did not do. Darnay, we know him, is a good person. But as the people know him, he's a bad person because he's an aristocrat, which also lays a foundation that not everything is black and white. And this blind strive for justice and revenge for the oppression that they faced for so many years, the peasants go out of control, and they don't even stop to consider that he wants to help them or that he sympathizes with them. The peasants don't see that. I did not realize this when I first started reading, but when I looked at it again, the very first passage of this novel pretty much summarizes the idea that Dickens believes that people are not either good or bad. He writes, "It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven. We were all going direct the other way." It summarizes the novel's theme of there not ever being complete good or bad. I think that relates very well to people. They're good people. They're a good person, but they also have their bad qualities. Or they're a bad person, but they're also good because they have good qualities. So that, I feel like this is a really good book when you're talking about different themes and the messages that they try to get across. Obviously, the biggest one and the most notable one, and the one that everyone talks about, is the redemption of Sydney Carton. And I think that's very important too. But the theme that seems to be jumping at me is the idea that it's not black and white. People are a mixture of good and bad. It's not everything is as it seems. Madame Defarge at the beginning seems amazing. She seems great. She seems righteous. And towards the end of the novel, you realize she's not perfect. She's not Madame Justice. She's blinded in her drive for justice, that she becomes someone completely different than the woman that you saw trying to achieve justice. You see a different side of her, and that tells you, oh, these people, they're not black and white. There's obviously, people make mistakes. People are not good, and then people are not bad. They're gray. And you see this with Sydney Carton, where he's presented as this drunk, this man who's wasting his life, but at the same time he's talented. People are obviously not what they seem. I mean, this guy who's basically a drunk is super talented. He's super wise. He's just a great guy overall. And actually, one of my favorite quotes from this novel is from Sydney Carton. When I read a book, I want to find memorable, wise. I want to find eloquent. I want to find powerful, impactful statements. And throughout these novels, there's scenes that are so powerful, so impactful, so memorable. But I thought to conclude this, to really showcase the book, to showcase the novel, I gotta let Dickens do it himself. So here are some really, really good passages that I think are absolutely amazing in his novel. Pretty early on in the book, he has this, which says, "A wonderful fact to reflect upon, that every human creature is constituted to be that profound secret and mystery to every other." I'm never ever gonna truly know anyone around me, like my parents, my friends. I'm never really gonna truly know them. So I can get to know them as well as I want, but there's a part of them is always going to remain a secret to me. When Carton's talking to Mr. Lorry, and I know this requires a little bit of context, but I think it's really good, so I think I'm going to read it to you anyways. "Yours is a long life to look back on, sir," said Carton wistfully. And then we have Mr. Lorry talking to Carton, and he's like, yes, my life, it was a really good life. And Carton says to him, and I think this is such a good, and it really showcases how wise Carton is right here. He says, "If you could say with truth to your own solitary heart tonight, I have secured to myself the love and attachment, the gratitude or respect of no human creature. I have won myself a tender place in no regard. I have done nothing good or serviceable to remember by. Your 78 years would be the 78 heavy curses, would they not?" Carton's basically saying, if you do not live the years of your life influencing, if you're not living them loving others with other people, then what's the point? But when you're living it for others, when you know there are others there for you, Carton is saying you are living a worthy life. And you're not wasting your life, because when you're gone, your life would have meant so much to other people. When you're gone, your life would have meant so much for other people, and that's what Carton is saying. Carton is saying our lives are sometimes not about ourselves. Finally, the very last quote that I'll share with you guys. It's one of my favorites. I wrote this in my planner because I really thought it really spoke to me after reading this entire novel. And it's actually the very, very last line of the novel. Dickens writes, "It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done. It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known." I think there's just something so peaceful about that, where it's like I'm dying in peace because I have made amends with all the parts of my life that I thought were broken. It's an old novel. I mean, it was written by Charles Dickens. It's an old novel, so it's a little bit hard to understand, but if you are able to get through that, the plot is amazing. It's just absolutely wonderful.